Now, as the continent celebrates this day, which is Africa Day, we look at the Africa Day Red Card campaign. Now, activists around the world are on a mission to stop the threat to freedom and democracy on the continent. Now, some countries are looking to change their term limits, which sees presidents staying in power longer than they should. Well, we're joined in studio by Professor Cheryl Hendricks from the University of Johannesburg. Prof, thank you very much for giving us your time. I think let's begin this conversation by talking about, or allowing you to remind us what the Africa Day Red Card campaign is all about.
Let us remind ourselves what Africa Day is all about. Africa Day is a celebration of our independence, of our freedom, of our human dignity, of our unity in diversity. It is a celebration of our leaders who fought so hard for our democratization. And on Africa Day, we remember them, we celebrate how far we've come, but we also raise the challenges that we still have to face. And so this Red Card campaign is about pointing to a particular challenge that I think is on the continent at this moment in time. And it's about term limits for presidents. We, I think, are seeing an increase in the number of presidents trying to change term limits on the continent. Let me point out that the vast majority of presidents do respect term limits. We just celebrated Ellen Johnson Sirleaf stepping down.
Liberia.
We saw President Khama stepping down, Sierra Leone we saw stepping down. And so we have to protect that trend as well. Okay? From 2015, however, we saw Rwanda extending term limits. We saw Congo extending term limits. Last week, we saw Burundi extending term limits. We've also had Togo, Guinea, Chad, Cameroon. So the Red Card campaign is to say, this is Africa Day. Let's mark it, but let's also raise an awareness around these term limits that presidents are trying to change.
Prof, it's such a difficult concept to even imagine presidents trying to change term limits so that they remain in office longer than desirable in 2018, for crying out loud. This is obviously a growing trend. Talk to us about what the consequences will be if left unchallenged.
If we leave this unchallenged, we're going to see more and more countries doing it. Because when presidents see they can get away with this, we're going to go back to a situation of one-man rule on this continent. So I do think as citizens, as fellow presidents, as our leaders, we should be raising this. I don't see sufficient comment coming from the organizations that are there to represent us, like the African Union, for example, like SADC. We need to be speaking out about this and not being silent.
How do we keep, then, the conversations alive? How do we keep the Africa Day Red Card campaign alive?
So the Red Card campaign is on social media. It's an organic campaign. It actually started with women from Burundi and South Sudan and the DRC speaking about what was happening in their countries. And we thought we needed to do something. The Africa Center gave life, I think, to this campaign by designing the Red Card. You can go to #TermIsUp and have a conversation around leadership on this continent about the future Africa that we want to see. Keep up the Red Card for today to remind ourselves about our freedom, about our independence, and the need to stop presidents from changing term limits in this way.
Fantastic. Well, let's keep the Red Card campaign alive, particularly on a day like this. Thank you very much for your time, Professor Cheryl Hendricks from the University of Johannesburg.